Good morning, board members. For those of you that are virtual, we're going to wait just a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Thank you.
Our board meeting at 9:05. And with that, Executive Director Ross, will you provide the roll call?
President Haley,
Here.
Superintendent Horn, Vice President Hagerman,
Here.
Member Catanese, Dr. Clay,
Here.
Dr. Cruz Rivera,
Here.
Dr. Hightower is not with us today. Member Kravickas,
Here.
Dr. Webke's not with us today. President Haley, you have a quorum.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. With this, I will just give a brief president's report. There's a couple things I need to announce, but also wanted to just say a few things. First, I just wanted to express my deep gratitude to the state board staff and to every member of the board, really for your focus, your attention, and hard work this year. We dealt with a lot of things and some were a little not planned. And so we're really grateful to each one of you for your dedication. I think it's allowed us to make some meaningful progress on a couple of fronts. And I just wanted to, specifically in the areas of educator discipline policies and school finance, as we look ahead to 2025, later today, we'll approve our 2025 goals, and many of the priorities of 25 will be carried into 2026. And I think it just reflects the scale of work and the urgency we feel as a board, with a specific focus on school accountability, statewide assessments, early literacy and numeracy, teacher quality, and educator discipline. These are sort of the 5 areas where we will be focusing our attention. I think they are priorities that are grounded in our belief that Arizona students must have a strong educational foundation to become lifelong learners, active contributors in society, and participants in what I would say is a very dynamic and evolving economy. Recent national developments I think further underscore our focus, especially on literacy and numeracy. UC San Diego last week or 2 weeks ago published a Senate administration working group on admissions finding that found 1 in 12 freshmen lacked middle school level math proficiency. I think it's one of the first of any higher ed institution to take a serious look at what the students that are coming in with the knowledge and the background. And I think that type of honest reporting reminds us as a state board that our work on assessment, accountability, literacy, and numeracy must remain at the forefront. We also know that educators who have benefited from science of reading training are seeing noticeable impact in their students' comprehension and literacy. And I'm really grateful that the board has continued to focus its attention on that, as well as increasing our attention on numeracy. Last week, the Department of Ed provided some guidance on students with disabilities, and in the new year, I'm really excited, and I hope the rest of the board is. We look forward to hearing an update on the clarifications on graduation pathways, and specifically the relationship between FAPE, academic standards, accountability reporting, and school finance requirements. This is an area where the board clarity and I think statewide consistency can meaningfully support students, families, and our districts. And then finally, I just want to make a note that as we prepare for the new year, I want to note that in January, the nominating committee will meet to present its recommendations for board leadership. This committee will include Dr. Jackie Clay, Jason Katniss, and Carla Phillips-Krabicus. And I just want to say thank you for your willingness to serve. And then last but not least, I just want to remind that during the public comment period, speakers will be granted 2 minutes to speak, and the board does not respond to public comments. But we want you to know that we value your public participation and impact. And with that, thank you so much for your shared mission. And I'm excited that we're wrapping up this year and looking forward to the new year. And with that, Superintendent Horn, your report.
Yes, just one brief point, and that is that with respect to the motion to take DEI out of the teaching standards, somebody on one of the news programs raised a concern about teaching Native American history. There's absolutely nothing about taking DEI out of standards that would interfere with teaching the history of Native Americans or any other group. In fact, I was the one during my first term who put into the standards that we should teach the history of different groups. And so that will remain. And I want to make it clear that that is that is not an issue at all. And in addition to that, under federal law, Native American groups have special protection. So there's absolutely no danger with respect to teaching the history of Native Americans or of any other group for that matter.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent. And with that, Executive Director, Ross, your report. I think this is, as we all know, our favorite time of the day.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. I do indeed have the best part of the meeting. We have, as we do each month, 2 amazing Arizona students to honor today as State Board Students of the Month. Super excited to have them both join us today, have their families join us today, and have them share a little bit about themselves. Up first is Aranza Frausto Castillo, who's a 4th grade student from La Paz County. She was nominated by Superintendent Jennifer Walton. The superintendent said that Aranza always has a positive attitude and are respectful to teachers, peers, and staff, acts with integrity, and has confidence to have difficult conversations with those that she cares about, goes out of her way to lend a helping hand to others, and is respectful, kind, and empathetic. Aranza, why don't you come on up?
Hi, my name is Aranza Frausto Castillo. I am 10 years old. Hi, my name is Aranza Frausto Castillo. I am 10 years old. I am in 4th grade at Salome Elementary School. My teacher's name is Miss Gomez. I like going to school to learn and play with my friends. My favorite subjects are math and art because I like to draw and I want to get better. My teacher helps me improve in my reading and spelling and becoming kinder and more empathetic. When I grow up, I want to be a teacher because I want to help other students learn and spread kindness. I also wanted to say when I got here, I only knew how to talk in Spanish, so I had to learn, and now I know a lot.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Up next, we have another awesome kiddo student, Liam Pichelle, who's a sixth grade student from Willow Creek Charter School in Yavapai County, was nominated by his principal, Katie Sevy. Katie said that Liam has outstanding character and leadership and is respected by all students, moved up a grade for math to access more challenging coursework, is an active member of student council for 2 years and happily lends a hand whenever needed, plays football, basketball, flag football, all while maintaining excellent academics, and always sets a positive example and leads with compassion. Liam?
Hello, I'm Liam. I live in Prescott and attend the Willow Creek Charter School. One of my accomplishments is being in 7th grade math when I'm still in 6th grade. I like the fact that I go to a small school, so you are more involved in the learning. When I grow up, I want to go to ASU and play for the Arizona Sun Devils. Or I would love to be a welder, preferably an underwater welder. I'd like to thank my principal, Miss Seavey, for nominating me for this award and giving me this amazing opportunity. I would also like to thank the school board for giving me this amazing opportunity and choosing me to be one of the students of the month.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, that concludes the executive director's report for today.
Okay. I should also note that many thanks to the Arizona Charter School Board and the Arizona State Board of Education. We have these really cool screens, so we can now see the presentations better. So it's a little more crowded up here than before, but thank you. With that, we're now going to move to the call to the public. This is item 2. This is a time for the public to comment on items listed in the consent agenda or the general session. Members of the public may also address topics not on today's agenda. Please note that Arizona law prohibits the board from discussing or taking legal action on members raised during the call to the public that are not currently part of meeting agenda. Each speaker has 2 minutes to address the board during the 1-hour public comment period. Furthermore, speakers are not allowed to cede their time to another speaker, and personal attacks are not appropriate. And with that, Deputy Director Duplanty, have we received any requests to speak?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, yes, we have. First up will be Noah James Markham, followed by Beth Hatcher, followed by Jennifer Reddle. Noah?
Okay, thank you. Wow, it's been a minute since I've been here. But aloha, Miss President, and to the rest of the State Board of Education Board. My name is Noah James Markham. I'm a person with disabilities, had not the right treatment trying to learn in public schools here in Arizona. I would first of all like to talk about how Mesa took away a deaf school because it was all about the ESA voucher program and how it only goes to charter schools and not public schools. Living in Tempe and living and breathing the air over there, you can see the sense of that this city cares about their children, and DEI matters to parents. And they allowed the kids to think in diverse ways. I love this for Tempe. I ask whatever you do to legislation with DEI, that we always keep it here in the schools in Arizona, and that how we can understand kids with disabilities too. I also ask that you guys talk more about the concentration camps that were made in Arizona and others stated for the Japanese when Pearl Harbor was bombed. In your education system for all K through 6th grade, middle school, and high school, in schools to read about and teach in classes. And one last thing I would like to talk about, Mormons and the seminary class that they take in school. I respect, also disagree with your religion, Mormons. But if seminary is still around in all the schools, we need to make sure they talk about DEI because that matters. And Catholicism is being taught in seminary class too. We must have DEI, even though I don't agree with your religion. We should embrace women empowerment too in schools and even in charter schools too. Mahalo and thank you for listening to me tonight or to this morning.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Beth Hatcher, followed by Jennifer Reddle, followed by Debbie Royals. Beth?
Thank you. President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. My name is Beth Hatcher, a retired teacher and former governing board member and president in the Cave Creek Unified School District. I'm a member of the Council for Native American Ministry, commissioned by the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona. Having reviewed the history and social science standards and combined with my membership in the Council for Native American Ministry, I appear before you today respectfully asking that 4 items be added as modifications to the standards. They are the addition of the doctrine of discovery, naming Native American genocide just as the Holocaust is named, insert the word forced as it relates to migration of Indigenous peoples, and add Indigenous Peoples Day where holidays are named. The doctrine of discovery predates the Constitution by 300 years, give or take. It is the basis for exploration, discovery, colonization, westward expansion, and forced removal of Native Americans, resulting in cultural and literal genocide. Like the Constitution, which is named in the standards, the doctrine established policy and laws which exist to this day. The doctrine was most recently cited by Ruth Bader Ginsburg in a 2005 Supreme Court decision where the ruling went against the Oneida tribe. Like the Constitution, the doctrine is a living set of documents which all of us have either benefited from or, as in the case of Native Americans, suffered from its consequences. Students have no knowledge of the doctrine because it is not required in the standards. Our students should be taught social studies from all perspectives, accurately and honestly. Combined with critical thinking skills and complete knowledge, our students will be informed and equipped to make decisions with liberty and justice for all. We are in times where educational content is being sanitized. History should be taught accurately, even history we find uncomfortable. Therefore, I ask the board to call for a standards review committee. Our students are entitled to an honest and factual historical perspective so that fair and just decisions can be made by all and for all. Thank you for your consideration.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Jennifer Reddle, followed by Debbie Royals, followed by Beth Lewis. Jennifer?
Thank you. President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. My name is Jennifer Reddall, and I am the Episcopal Bishop of the Diocese of Arizona. I reside in the Phoenix Unified School District and the mother of a student at Bioscience High School. And I am also a member of the Council for Native American Ministry within our diocese. And I'm also joining in Beth's call for the standards regarding the teaching of Native American history to be modified to include the doctrine of discovery. It needs to be explicitly named, just like the Constitution and Manifest Destiny and the Mayflower Compact, because it is a fact of our history. The doctrine was a theological and political philosophy laid out in a series of papal declarations in the 15th and 16th centuries, stating that any territories that Christian explorers encountered could be occupied and claimed if the people there were not Christian. The doctrine of discovery was and is the basis and justification for government and Supreme Court decisions, the most recent in 2005, and has dramatically altered the lives of Indigenous people to this day. We also ask that the standards which currently mention genocide, specifically of the Holocaust, include that Native American genocide be included as a genocide that took place on our soil. We also recognize that since Columbus Day and Thanksgiving are named in the standards, we ask that Indigenous Peoples Day should also be added to the standards. And finally, when we're describing the Native American migration across the United States, we ask for the phrase to read forced migration. We join in the call for a review of the standards to include these facts of our history. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Debbie Royals, followed by Beth Lewis, followed by Brandy Blackford. Debbie?
Leo Sinchianiavu Kechimalea. Good morning. My name is Debbie Royals. I am Pasquayaqui and reside in Tucson, Arizona, where our original Pasquayaqui settlement has existed since before Arizona was a state. I am the canon for Native American ministry in the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona and with the Council for Native American Ministry. The education standards, including the doctrine of discovery, are critical components of the U.S. education standards. However, there is a significant gap in the representation of these in the K through 12 curricula. The Every Student Success Act and the Indian Self-Determination Act and the Education Assistant Act aim to address this by providing funding and allowing Indigenous tribes to assume administrative responsibility over federally funded programs, including education. These acts support the inclusion of Indigenous cultures and languages in public schools for Native students, promoting a more culturally appropriate curriculum. However, I'd like to speak to you a little bit as a Pasquayaqui elder, as an Eastern Cherokee elder. I'm deeply concerned that my children's children, now in school, are still not learning the truth about our American history. As an elder now, I invite you to hear how my own experience in these formative years of school impacted my life. I was not seen. There was no room for my people's history to be shared, and it was never mentioned in any way that reflected the contributions of my people or how the settler colonizers forced our people from the lands, from our way of living, from our language, and for not being seen as a person and a human being. Losing one's identity is serious. I hope that you will consider including the doctrine of discovery in the curriculum standards. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Beth Lewis, followed by Brandy Blackford, followed by Angela Faber. Beth? Doesn't look like she's present. Brandy Blackford?
Hello, good morning. I am an ESA mom here to talk about ESA things. First of all, I would really like to share what families are experiencing right now because the ones that are following the rules are the ones that are being hurt. The first issue is Amazon and the fact that entire categories of basic educational items are now blocked. Not because they're inappropriate, but because ESA has told ClassWallet to block them. Parents are being pushed into reimbursement as the only option, and most ESA families simply can't afford to front the money. A clear example is a stand mixer. Every normal, affordable model is blocked through the Amazon marketplace. The only one left is a commercial version costing nearly $1,000, the one that should be blocked, that isn't. The second issue is the playground and playset confusion. Parents are being told that we can get them. It's in the handbook, yet every one is being denied as being unreasonable. Some brands are being approved, some aren't, and SPED justification letters are being dismissed. Families can't follow rules that keep changing. The third issue, and the largest issue, the biggest one, is the audit and account lockouts. Parents are being frozen out of their accounts for months with no communication. They are not being given any emails. They are not being given any recourse. And by the time they finally get through to somebody, they're being told to repay something or lose their funding forever without being told what the issue actually is. Tutoring is stopping, therapy is stopping, and they aren't being communicated with. Across all of this, families are doing their best. They want to follow the rules. They want to support their kids, but the lack of communication and the absence of our community outreach person is creating fear and instability. I'm asking the board to look closely at what's happening and help bring clarity, consistency, and real support back to the program. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Angela Faber, followed by Mario Acosta, followed by Alex Leonard. Angela? It doesn't look like she's online or in person, so we'll go to Mario. Doesn't look like he's online. Alex?
Good morning. My name is Alexandra Leonard. I'm also a member of the Council for Native American Ministry, commissioned by the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona. I'm here today to respectfully ask that the Arizona History and Social Science standards be modified to include the following: that the doctrine of discovery be explicitly named, as are the Constitution, Manifest Destiny, and the Mayflower Compact. The doctrine of discovery is current legal legislation that is cited for decisions in courts across our country. It is about understanding the legal framework that still governs land rights cases in Arizona and nationwide today. The standards already mention genocide and specifically name the Holocaust. I request that Native American genocide also be included. Academic integrity requires that we apply the same specificity to genocide that has taken place on our soil. That Indigenous Peoples Day be named alongside other federal holidays named in the standards, such as Columbus Day and Thanksgiving. Students learning about American civic life should understand the holidays and observances our federal government recognizes, just as they learn about other federal holidays in the standards. And last, when describing Native American migration across these lands, I asked for the phrase forced migration to be included. The Indian Removal Act, the Long Walk of the Navajo, and other relocations were legally mandated government actions, not voluntary movements. Many of us are familiar with Winston Churchill's quote, "Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it." Think about happenings in your lives, lessons you've learned, mistakes that you've made that you've promised to yourselves to never make again. How has experiencing those lessons and learning from those mistakes shaped you into who you are today? Unlike in those situations in this instance, we are not asking you to live through these events or experiences. We're asking you to help our children learn from them. We are asking you to help the children of our state not to repeat them. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Susan Groff, followed by Pamela Kelly, followed by Samantha Thompson. Susan?
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Susan Groff. I've worked as an educator since 1978 here in Arizona. My comments are about what improves student learning, not politics, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I don't believe that the original authors of Arizona's teaching standards ever intended the DEI terms to mean what they've come to mean in recent years. In our standards, equity simply meant giving every student fair access to learning, seating a child where they can hear, providing large print, or pre-teaching vocabulary for English learners. But nationally, these same terms were reinterpreted in ways the authors never foresaw. And in some cases, this led to lower academic expectations or disruptions that families did not support. That's how we arrived at the federal requirement to revise the language. We have clear examples of misinterpretation. In San Francisco, 8th grade algebra was eliminated in the name of equity, and the result was lower achievement and families leaving the public school system. At some campuses across the country, administrators allowed encampments to continue for days or weeks in the name of inclusion. And the result was disruption and intimidation. In contrast, at ASU in 2024, students were fully allowed to protest during the day, but they were not allowed to extend the protest into overnight camping on alumni lawn. After repeated warnings, ASU police enforced that longstanding rule. It showed that clear, am I off? Am I
You're
over
all
time?
done. Thank you so much
Okay.
for your comments.
Thank you for your time and service.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Pamela Kelly, followed by Samantha Thompson, followed by Elias Toon. Pamela?
Good morning, Superintendent Horn and the board. I am Pamela Kelly, a teacher and former ELL director in education 33 years. I see firsthand how urgently our students need clear, research-based standards that support consistent and effective instruction. The letter from legislators underscores the confusion and classroom disruption created by unclear language in the current SEI framework, issues which teachers have been raising for many, many years. Allowing ADE to begin the rulemaking process is not political. It is a necessary step to restore instructional stability and protect the integrity of English language learners statewide. Every day the board delays, districts, teachers, and our students continue operating under a framework that is misaligned with federal expectations and undermines students' instructional time. I cordially urge the board to authorize this work immediately so educators can provide the focused, compliant, and high-quality instruction our students of Arizona deserve. Thank you for your time.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Samantha Thompson, followed by Elias Toon, followed by Olivia Reed. Samantha?
Good morning, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and members of the board. My name is Samantha Thompson, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Arizona Alternative Education Consortium, or AEC. I currently serve as the AEC president, and I'm here today to express our strong support for the proposed alternative school application and designation. The AEC honors and represents more than 50 members across the state, serving in a wide range of alternative education schools and programs. Our mission is to advocate, educate, and collaborate advocating for alternative education and the students we serve, educating communities about the unique needs of the learners, and collaborating educators to serve and share best practices and build pathways for student success. We appreciate the proposed criteria recognize that the intentional design and purpose of alternative schools. The recommendation before you today reflects a deeper understanding of what an alternative school is and how it functions. It brings clarity and consistency across the state while honoring the flexibility and innovation that are essential to alternative schools. On behalf of our members and the thousands of students they serve, we believe these criteria will strengthen alternative education in Arizona, reinforce accountability, and ensure students continue to receive specialized supports they need to grow, graduate, and contribute to their communities. The AEC has also submitted written comments in support of these updates, and we want to express our deepest gratitude for the work that the Double ATAC committee has done. We appreciate the committee's thoughtful approach and the willingness to include many alternative stakeholders throughout the process. Thank you for your time and your continued commitment to Arizona students, especially those in alternative settings. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Elias Toon, followed by Olivia Reed, followed by Krista Damolen. Elias? Doesn't seem Elias is here. Olivia Reed?
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Olivia Reed, and I'm a licensed Arizona teacher and a parent. My professional background is in elementary education with specialized training in dual immersion French teaching and teaching English to speakers of other languages. I have taught in immersion classrooms both in Arizona and in Utah. My native English-speaking children are currently enrolled in a public school dual language immersion program. I am here today regarding agenda items 4A and 4B, the proposal to open the structured English immersion endorsement frameworks, and the Arizona Professional Teaching Standards for revision. While these items may sound procedural, they carry real and structural consequences. Together, they shape how English learners are taught and how bilingual education is positioned in Arizona classrooms. Revising the SEI framework affects how teachers are trained to support language development. Revising professional teaching standards determines what Arizona formally values in teaching practices. My concern is that if dual language and bilingual education are not clearly addressed in both, their role may gradually weaken, not by a single policy shift, but through changes in teaching requirements, certification pathways, and instructional emphasis. Dual immersion does not compete with English development. It strengthens it while also building biliteracy, cultural understanding, and long-term academic success. Multiple long-term studies have consistently found that students in dual language immersion programs perform as well as or better than their peers in English-only programs academically by the upper elementary grades, while also gaining proficiency in an additional language. I have personally seen an immersion school in Chandler close, not due to the lack of family interest, but due to limited structural support and sustainability planning. That experience makes this issue especially tangible for families like mine. I respectfully ask the board, if you proceed with revisions, to include experienced immersion educators and multilingual families in the decision-making process, preserve clear certification pathways for all teachers that reflect the enrichment bilingual and immersion education bring to a student's learning, and ensure protections for dual language instruction are explicitly addressed in any procedural changes. Thank you for your time.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Krista Damolen, followed by Arlie Flores, followed by Cedric Collins. Krista?
Good morning, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and members of the board. My name is Dr. Krista Damolen East, and I'm both proud and honored to be the superintendent of Globe Unified School District, a district that I graduated high school from and that boasts alumni like former Governor Rose Mofford. As a small rural district, we take pride in the robust education and opportunities that we provide our approximately 1,500 students. This year, we have a student that is a National Merit Scholar semifinalist, and our robotics team went undefeated this weekend at their tournament, ensuring them a place in the state final. We are doing amazing things. Our students and staff are incredible, and we do all of this without a bond or an override. Our annual audits from a third-party company show compliance to the USFR, and the Auditor General's audit also shows no signs of fraud or financial mismanagement. I am saddened that our district is on the agenda to be considered in non-compliance with the USFR. We are a district that wants to be the best and that does the right thing every time. Although saddened, we are also full of resolve to meet all recommended best practices and to correct all deficiencies quickly. In fact, we've been working diligently to ensure that proper financial controls are implemented and used without variance. There are a number of deficiencies that occur only once a year, meaning we cannot fix them until that 1 year time period has happened once again. Please note that there have been no findings of fraud or financial mismanagement. All findings are procedural or preventative and were caused by human errors and inconsistencies. We're continually working towards being the best. You should have received a written letter I submitted as part of the call to the public. In that letter, I mentioned I'm in my second year as superintendent and have been working hard on the audits from 23 and 24. We're a rural district and we already struggle with adequate funding, recruitment of staff, and this would be harder. I plead humbly with the board to remove this item from the consent agenda and to consider letting us continue without holding funds.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is RLE Flores, followed by Cedric Collins, followed by David Tywhite. RLE.
Good morning. My name is Aurelie Flores, and I am the chairperson for the Globe High School Alumni Association. I represent more than 8,000 alumni around the world. I'm also a proud graduate of Globe High School. Globe Unified launched me into the world, and I'm deeply grateful for the public school foundation that allowed me to succeed. I understand this agenda item is a procedural step following the Auditor General's report. And I also understand that state law requires support and assistance to districts in this situation, so corrective action can be taken. In my career, I served as the Director of Planning and Research for a division of the Superior Court, working with operational reviews and internal controls. So I fully appreciate the importance of the USFR standards. The audit reports for the Globe Unified School District show no misuse of public funds. The findings appear to be procedural, and the district has taken meaningful steps to improve. Any withholding of funds, even temporarily, will take real opportunity away from real students. In a small copper mining town like Globe, there are no alternative funding sources, and resources are already stretched thin. Even a brief withholding of funds will be felt immediately in classrooms. The students at Globe Unified are resilient and full of potential, striving to get the best education possible in a rural area, just like I was. They need every possible resource so they can compete for opportunities beyond that small town. So respectfully, if the time comes for a decision, I'm asking the board to consider withholding no funds or the smallest amount possible so rural students can continue to rise and launch into their own lives with confidence and hope. Thank you for your time and for your dedication to Arizona students.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Cedric Collins, followed by David Tywhite, followed by Beth Lewis. Cedric.
Good morning, President Haley and Superintendent Horn and members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today, even though it is in protest. All right, I have two issues I will be discussing here. Arizona's rural school districts have been affected the most by the lack of school funding to provide staff and resources to maintain proper financial controls. And then the same system penalizes these rural school districts by cutting their budgets further for not having proper controls. The system that is creating these issues and then punishing the Arizona rural students for not having them. Not only do we ask for the state board to table this agenda and not to cut the Globe and other small rural districts, but for this body to advocate for support systems instead of punitive systems to help Arizona's rural school districts and the students that they serve. I believe this is part of the mission and purpose of this body, and we hope that your decision today will reflect that. My second discussion will be on DEI. DEI are not just buzzwords or check boxes, nor is it a destination. It is ongoing work. It requires us to listen, to learn, and to be uncomfortable. Progress has never come from comfort. It comes from courage. So let us continue to build spaces in the classrooms where our students feel valued not in spite of their differences, but because of them. It is up to us to continue to expand and build our society and create a future where every student can thrive. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is David Ty White, followed by Beth Lewis, followed by Mario Acosta. Ty?
Thank you. I'm here to speak to item H. Please forgive me, my throat's a little bit raw. Had this cold going around. Before I start, please let me express, I don't take lightly that there are violations to codes USFR. It's how our public schools demonstrate accountability for every dollar spent. The problem is that in rural schools, especially, there's a shortage of funding to hire personnel. There's a shortage in finding compliance officers even to be around. And so when you have some of these violations pertaining to hiring a specific person for a role, the funding doesn't already exist for that. And now using a financial consequence as a punishment for that makes it harder to fix that compliance and come into alignment. I think this is a larger problem to start with for rural schools in the first place because they lack the economy of scale that larger school districts have, as well as sometimes just having people available in the communities that are able to fill those roles. I'd ask for consideration both for Globe and for Window Rock in the sense that rather than punishing the schools, our whole aim is to educate, and it would go further to be able to spare personnel or to host trainings that allow these schools to fix that problem. We've already seen in a recent court case that the state legislature has underfunded schools and not allowed them the funding they need to operate the way they're supposed to. And so it kind of speaks towards this need right now to not punish either of these schools financially. There was a sign on the saddle shop in there's a sign on the wall of my grandfather's saddle shop that said the beating shall continue until morale improves. And it's one of those things that I've remembered all my life because we get stuck on some of these solutions. We need to consider new ways forward. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Beth Lewis, followed by Mario Acosta. Beth?
Good morning, members of the board. Thank you so much for your service. I am a parent of 2 public school students, an educator of 12 years, and the director of Save Our Schools Arizona. I'm here to urge you to vote no on agenda items 4A and 4B. The revisions that the ADE has proposed to make to the Arizona teaching standards and bilingual education standards do appear to go much further than what Trump's executive order dictates. It's also important to note that the executive order is currently tied up in the courts with 14 active cases pending. The federal government has not offered any guidance as to what DEI even means when it comes to educator standards. Therefore, the ADE's attempts to remove so-called DEI certainly constitute a broad overreach that would go well beyond what would be reasonably required by the order should it survive in court. Ensuring our educators understand and are responsible to cultural differences and the social, emotional, and cultural needs of our students is key to student learning. Any educator will tell you that. Gutting standards around responsiveness to cultural backgrounds, cultural competence, celebrating cultural diversity, and leveraging home language and cultural assets it would be educational malpractice and would erase what makes our students unique. It would erase their talents, their context, and their homeschool connection, all of which are critical for learning. As Dr. Wibke noted in the last meeting, you can ask 10 different people what DEI is and you'll get 10 different answers. As board member Collins said today, DEI is ongoing work that requires us to listen, to learn, and be uncomfortable. We must make progress and move forward, not backwards. I urge members of the board to support our students by rejecting these revisions as an overreach and to vote no so that Arizona students are not needlessly impacted by political posturing and games. Thank you for your consideration.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Mario Acosta. Mario?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. I've just recently moved back to Arizona. I moved here with my family, they're all grown up now, 91, worked for TUSD, worked for a charter school, and I'm a clinical psychologist. I went to UC Berkeley. So I'm not a recipient of public education here in Arizona, because I grew up in New York. But what I wanted to bring to your attention is I want to second exactly what Beth just mentioned. The revision to these standards is, I would assume, not assume, no, seem to imply Arizona is going to go backwards. I grew up in a multicultural setting like New York City. Tucson and this area, Pima County, and some of the other surrounding areas is also a highly, highly multicultural area with the influx of students and families coming from all over, not just the southern border, but from all over. I'm appalled, frightened, because I've got a family in the Air Force who's probably going to retire here in this area with grandkids, and they probably will continue to go to public schools. They're currently going to public schools in California. So I think if you move on these revisions to the teaching standards, I think Arizona will be hurt, and the families of children in Arizona will be hurt tremendously. So again, I'm going to just echo what Beth just said. I'm also a volunteer with your organization, but I've also worked with many other organizations throughout the state having to do with education. Again, I'm a clinical psychologist. I look at this from all points of views. And again, what's currently happening, not just here in Arizona, but all over the country, because I've got grandchildren in other states. And these antiquated ideas are not based on anything that has to do with evidence-based research or findings. So I urge you, and especially you, Superintendent Horn, because you've had a horrible history in this state. Sorry.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, that concludes this call to the public.
Great. All right, we'll now move to item 3. This is the consent agenda. Is there an item or items from the consent agenda that a board member would like to pull and discuss? Member Kravickas.
Yeah, I'd like to pull item K.
Okay. 1 second. Do I have any other items? Dr. Clay.
I would like to pull item H for discussion.
H. 3H.
Make sure I get the right one.
Yeah. Okay. So what I would like to do is vote on the first items, and then we will discuss items 3H and 3K. So with that, I would like to have a motion to vote on items 3A through 3G, as in George, 3I and J, and items 3L through N. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Member Kravickas makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Clay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing that there are none, the motion carries. So the first item, we'll just go in order. So item 3H, Dr. Clay.
President Haley, members of the board, I just want to just bring to your attention again that we have problems or challenges with our small schools and school finance. I myself in Cochise County, we had 3 schools that have been in this situation. And what we've done, we're working with the community college to grow our own business managers. We're having training throughout the county, trying to shake those trees, finding those people who have accounting in their blood. Okay, but the problem we have, or the challenge we have, is just getting those people. Again, I have 3 schools, and I have a question. Once the school comes into compliance, how long does it take for them to receive the money back? Because the money is not taken away permanently. Can someone, how long does it take for them to receive the money back?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Dr. Clay, we actually have a representative from the Auditor General's office with us online who can, I believe, answer.
That was one of the questions I had. But again, there is a problem. We need to not ignore that, and we need to come together as a state. And I will be talking to Superintendent Horn about strategies that we can look at so that this won't happen again. Thank you.
So Chris, from the Auditor General's office, I know you're with us. Could you just discuss a little bit about the process that you all work with schools, and then once they've ended up on a board agenda, the work that continues, and then Dr. Clay's specific question was about the return of funding?
Yes, Madam President and members of the board, my name is Chris Vacherbeck. I'm the manager of the Accountability Services Division with the Auditor General's office. When we review all the independent audit reports that districts get annually, and then we review them for not for compliance with the USFR. When a district has reached a point where we cannot call them as being compliant with the USFR, we send them a 90-day letter. The district has 90 days to correct the deficiencies. At the end of those 90 days, we will we send them a correction action plan, and we work with the district during that period to answer questions about their specific deficiencies, how to possibly correct them. The district is responsible for correcting those deficiencies. At the end of the 90-day period, we will make a determination based off what is in the corrective action plan and determine whether or not the district is ready for a status review. For both of these 2 districts that we are discussing, Window Rock and Globe, they both appear to make sufficient progress to warrant a status review. We did perform a status review on both districts, and unfortunately, neither districts had made satisfactory corrections to their deficiencies, and we determined that they should be continuing non-compliance, and that's where we are in the process with notifying the state board, and they'll make the determination on whether or not the district remains in continuing non-compliance. At that point, the district can, or the state board has the option to withhold funding from the districts. And that's a determination the district makes. After the district, we will continue working with the district afterwards. And we have worked with both districts as far as helping them continue to correct their deficiencies. We have not come to that point where they are ready for a second status review. Whenever we would have a second status review or we receive information from audit reports that would clear the district for non-compliance, we send a letter to the state board, and then they would make that determination of whether or not any withheld funding would be returned to the district. And then the Department of Education would return those funds at their discretion. I don't really have answers for when that would happen. That would be a question that would go to the Department of Education.
Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Dr. Clay. So once we receive a letter from the Auditor General's office that the district is back in compliance, that immediately can become a voting item. So you actually see that in 3G in this meeting itself for Hyder Elementary District. they were out of compliance. The board had voted to withhold. It's anywhere up to 10% of state aid funding. The board typically withholds 3%. So 3% of state aid. And then those funds, once the district is back in compliance, are returned to the district. Rico, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's within 2 years, correct? Yeah. So if the district is back in compliance within 2 years, then the board votes and those funds, as you just did with Hyder, are returned.
Thank you very much. My concern is still, we need to do more preventive maintenance. We need more support for our rural schools. We have 3 phases. We have before the bang, or during the bang and after the bang. We have to start looking at the before the bang, preventive maintenance, support, training, and whatever else it takes, because we cannot continue to do the same thing and expect something different. I expect that other schools, especially rural schools, will have the same issue, because sometimes we have people in these positions that need more training. Thank you.
Member Kravickas? And then I see Member Catanese.
Thank you, Madam President. Executive Director Ross, can you clarify that question? I'm sorry if I didn't understand it correctly. So, like with Hyder, we're voting to return it. Is that money returned immediately?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Kravickas, upon the completion of the vote, then the Department of Education is notified, the school finance team, to then return those funds. I don't know the exact amount of time, but it's an immediate notification.
And I guess maybe it's a question for the Auditor General's office. Given the plan that has been in place, how long do they need? I mean, I know they did a status review, but what is the status? I mean, did they make 80% progress, 20% progress?
Madam President, members of the board, again, this is Chris Vacherbeck from the Auditor General's office. Both districts made different strides for correcting their deficiencies. We don't really rate them as a percentage of how they're what percentage that they've corrected or not. We more look at the nature and the number of deficiencies. And if we had called either of these 2 districts no longer non-compliance when we received their follow-up audit reports, based off the work that we did and what we saw in the status review, they would both come back the same issue of being in non-compliance.
Chris, though, can you comment on the continued work that your office does with districts that are not in compliance, please?
Yes, again, Madam President and members of the board, we do set up in the first initial 90-day period. We meet with the district weekly, generally maybe every other week, depending on schedules, to go over their deficiencies and work with them, ask them to submit us documentation that their corrective actions are working. After we determine that the corrective action plan that they submitted did not satisfactorily correct their deficiencies, or else if we did a status review and determined the same thing, that the deficiencies are not corrected, we do at that point still work with the district. We don't have weekly meetings, it may be monthly or whatever the district needs from us, but it's in their hands to be able to notify us that they have sufficiently corrected their deficiencies and they would be ready for a second status review in the case of both of these 2 districts.
Member Kravickas, and then we'll go to Member Catanese.
Thank you. I'm thinking, as long as I've ever seen these, I've been looking at board agendas for entirely too many years. I think it's always been 3%. I don't ever remember it being something different, and I'm wondering how we got to that number. Because if we could go up to 10, where are we at 3? Is there a rubric or reasoning behind that?
So President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, historically the board has done a 3% withholding on in a first issue of noncompliance, or if a district was found to be noncompliant and then was back in compliance, and then let's say years later was back out, kept to that 3%. The board has, on a couple of occasions over the years, withheld 10% on a district or two that were out of compliance for multiple years in a row. So it's very rare. It's our experience has been, in fact, that the initial list the board staff receives of schools that are out of compliance, Rico Yanez, our policy director, as soon as he receives that list, immediately reaches out to those districts, sort of checks with them, checks with the Auditor General's office. And by the time it makes it to the board, that list is greatly reduced because most of those districts have worked their way back to compliance.
Member Katniss, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't find my button. Thank you, first off, for this information. Going with Member Kravickas, I actually was curious about how we also landed at 3%, but also, is there ever, I guess, a discrepancy based on a more rural district? Because what Member Clay was saying, I also agree that I personally don't feel it's always right for our rural districts to have, just a set number of a percentage that we're taking away if they are making strides towards compliance, especially because I know that right now we're in a teaching crisis. There's a lot of positions that need to be filled. And so I guess my question is, has there ever been a lower percentage for a more rural district, especially if they are making strides towards compliance?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Katniss, to my knowledge, the board has never made an allotment for the type of district. It's again, by statute, the Auditor General holds the audit when the district is found to be non-compliant in the process that Chris described. They notify the board, and then the board historically has withheld 3%.
And then I guess my other question is, if they are making strides towards compliance, what would the time frame be? Do we have an estimate on how much more time it would take for them to be compliant?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Member Katniss, that was the question Member Kravickas just asked. I believe Chris, let me know if I'm not representing your answer correctly, that effectively it's sort of up to the district, that the district at this point has been working with the Auditor General's office for months. The district has a corrective action plan. The district even received, the districts, I should say, received an updated status check, both districts. And so they've got an updated corrective action plan. And so the district will then reach out to the Auditor General's office when they believe they have met what is called for in that corrective action plan. Again, then getting another status review. If at that point the Auditor General determines they are back in compliance, they'll notify the board, again, as in item 3G, for this month, and the board could vote to return funds to that district. So it's up to the district. Member Katniss?
Any other questions from the board? Member Kravickas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's more of an observation because I'm hesitant to do something different since it's been practiced for so long for just any reason. But I think it does raise the question in the future of potentially having some kind of rubric. So there are external circumstances, how much stride they've made, the types of non-compliance, that there's a rubric or a kind of a range of at least of withholding between 0 to 10, where it seems like right now it's kind of 3 or 10 by history. I guess that's my comment.
I should also note, I believe that board staff have been kind of doing some additional outreach and educating districts across the state through webinars and other conversations to help ensure, since we've noticed particularly this year, or at least in my tenure on the board, that there are a number of individuals that are a number of districts that are coming before with under USFR noncompliance. And I believe that the board and working with the department are trying to help districts across the state to take proactive steps. I think especially in light of the stimulus dollars that are no longer available, there's just some effort to make sure that staff and districts have the support that they need. So I really appreciate this conversation, but is there any further discussion or debate or questions that we have specifically for Chris at the Auditor General's office? Nope. Okay, well, with that, I'd like to have a vote on, Member Katniss?
Yeah, I just had one more question, I guess, since there was this is kind of particularly different than some of the others that we've seen where there's not misuse, there's not fraud, there's not sort of that piece of why they're in this mess. And so I guess my question is, could we do a different proposal where it's not 3%, it's 1%?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Member Katniss, we actually don't typically tend to see fraud in USFR violations of this type. When those have come before the board, they've usually been parts of hearings for receivership. So, so historically, these do look a lot like what comes before the board when these come before the board. So just to clarify that point, that these are actually pretty indicative of what tends to come before the board in this manner. If there is some sort of suspicion of fraud or malfeasance, usually that's arisen in a potential hearing for receivership. But to answer your second question, the board's purview. The board can withhold up to, in statute, up to 10%. So anywhere within that range is again within the board's purview.
Okay. Do we have a motion for item, let me make sure I'm in the right number. Item 3H, items 1 and 2, to withhold 3%.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Clay seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
President Haley, the motion passes.
Great, thank you so much. Now we'll all move to item 3K, consideration to approve the Move On When Reading LEA and charter school literacy plans for release of K through 3 reading-based support funds. That was your item, Member Kavickas?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Those of you who've seen me over the years, you know I pull these often. Our reading test scores just went down another 3% for all kids as well as students with disabilities. So I feel compelled to not just make this a consent item, that every opportunity we can to talk about K-3 reading that we should. And I want to note something that was in the summary and something that the department has said every time we bring it up, which is true, is that they don't have the statutory authority to actually compel districts. So they have meetings and they give trainings and do all these wonderful things. But I think it's still an important question. I'm hoping that someone from the department is here to talk about, given this list, though, are there schools on this list who have adopted reading curriculums that are not evidence-based?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Kravickas, we do have Linda Burrows, the Deputy Associate Superintendent of Academic Standards, with us today, and she can speak to that. Linda?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Kravickas, I'm happy to answer that question for you. So you are right, ADE does not have really any statutory ability to require schools, take Mauer vetted curriculums that my department has gone through and done. However, we do have authority over Mauer literacy plans. And so what my team has started to do A year ago, we initiated a policy where schools are made aware in the literacy plan communication that is a back and forth between ADE and the LEAs. They're made aware that they are not in compliance with their curriculum, meaning that they have not chosen from the 20 or so vetted curriculums that have evidence-based research that proves that that curriculum does align with the science of reading and does in fact show progress and growth towards literacy. So currently we have about 75% of all districts and charters that are using high quality instructional materials that have been vetted by ADE, but we do have 25% that do not. So what we started to implement last year was a policy where schools are put on notice that year. They then have 3 years after that to obtain a high quality instructional material that is vetted and shows that evidence-based research that ADE has gone through and done. That gives the schools, they continue to get their Mauer funding during those years so they can then use that funding to purchase those materials. It gives schools an adequate amount of time to vet different curriculums, see is that curriculum what works for schools in that area. The process for that takes about 18 to 24 months to look through curriculums, vet the curriculums, have them open for public comment, make sure parents are involved, and have a look at that curriculum. Does it meet the needs of all students, including the special education needs students? So that gives schools ample time after they've been put on notice to then look for curriculum, vet that curriculum, get it adopted. If after those 3 years, schools still have not chosen or approved a Mauer vetted curriculum, that high quality evidence-based curriculum, then they lose their Mauer funding and they will not get Mauer funding until they do select a vetted curriculum.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate your efforts on this, and I'm grateful to hear that. So I apologize to you personally for my frustration, but our test scores are going down. Kids are not reading. And I feel like we need to have a really stronger sense of urgency as a state around this. And Mauer's been in place for a long time. I was good, like the whole time you're talking, going in my head, I'm like, it's been at least 10 years, if not longer. Yeah. How many?
2011.
Yeah, well, no, that sounds right.
2013,
2011
yeah.
is when we passed the law. I don't remember when literacy plans came in, but yeah, you're correct. Are the school boards notified that their curriculums are out of compliance? And parents as well?
That's a good question. I'm not President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Kravickas. That's a really good question. I'm not quite sure if school boards are notified of it. ADE does have constant communication with the LEA to let them know that they are not in compliance, and whether or not that message gets from the school or district to the actual school board, that I would not know, because we do not have contact with school boards through the Mauer portal.
I'm wondering how we can really open up that public conversation, right? So the community is aware, especially if there's going to be a potential loss of funds, and hopefully expedite that curriculum renewal or new purchase. Are there any other components of the literacy plans that school districts are struggling with into coming to compliance?
So President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Kravickas, again, that's a good question for the public comment kind of thing. One thing, the Mauer Literacy Report Plan from ADE or report is due December 15th. And this year we will be including those LEAs that are not in compliance. So that way that will help to bring kind of public awareness to the schools and districts that are not selecting high quality instructional materials that have been vetted by ADE, aligned with the science of reading, and have that evidence-based practice with it. To the second part of your question, remind me, I totally lost my train of thought.
Thank you. And I thank you for that answer as well. I'm looking forward to getting that report. That's in next week then.
Next week.
Second question was, are there any other components of the
that's
literacy
right.
plans that the district struggle to come into compliance or that you're seeing as needing the most guidance?
You know, that is a really good question. This year is the first year that we have the new portal. So with the portal, that's where we're kind of having some struggles with reporting and getting that, just users getting used to a new way of doing things. But as far as actually filling out the literacy plan and giving us that information back, no, I would say we do struggle with getting schools to report their end of year data. And so they have to report their screener data for kinder through third, for beginning of the year, middle of year, end of year. End of year is where we do struggle to get them to report that data. And so again, we're implementing that we will not approve the next year's literacy plan until they have input that previous year's data for us.
Thank you for that answer. Let me rephrase my question. Are there any other literacy plan requirements that you see districts out of compliance with? Like I think there's the intervention programs, the assessment data, other things that they're out of compliance.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Kravickas, at this point in time, we're not. They're reporting to us and they let us know if they promote a student from third grade onto fourth grade. They let us know which of the exceptions they are using to promote that child, or if they're withholding that child on the literacy plan. So those are, at this point in time, there isn't anything that we see as a glaring omission or difficulty that schools are having with the literacy plan.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the impromptu questions. I appreciate that. My last one, and it may be just something to follow up with me later. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, we made a substantial change to the rule in terms of the reporting and the data that the districts would have to start submitting and looking at, and ensuring that all of the assessments, including formative, were accessible to all learners, or a variety of things. If we could get an update on the implementation of those at a later time would be great.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Any other further discussion on item 3K? With that, I would like to go ahead and make a motion to vote on this item. So do I have a motion to approve? Member Kravickas, and do I have a second?
Second.
Give us just a second. President Haley, there we go. President Haley, if you could restate the motion, please.
Do I have a motion to approve item 3K?
So moved.
Member Kravickas makes a motion.
Second.
Member Katniss makes a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing there are none, the motion carries. With that, moving on to general session item 4. We'll start with item 4A and Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Items 4A and 4B, though we're beginning with 4A, were both originally at the October board meeting. Item 4A deals with the proposed opening of the Structured English Immersion Endorsement Course Frameworks for revision by the Arizona Department of Education. The board had questions about this process in October and had voted to table the vote until December. So with us today to address those questions and to answer any further questions is Adela Santa Cruz from the Arizona Department of Education. Adela?
Good morning. Again, my name is Adela Santa Cruz, and I am the Deputy Associate Superintendent in the Office of English Language Acquisition Services and the Migrant Education Program. President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, I was here back on October the 27th and presented for the first time our request, if you will, a request to open the process to make revisions to our Structured English Immersion course. I'll turn that. Okay. There we go. Okay, now it's working, but it went one too far. All right. The formal request was made to make changes to allow the process to open up that revision of the Structured English Immersion Endorsement Course Framework, as obviously that is the course, the framework that is used for instructing those teachers who are going to be our teachers of English language learners. I think that's what you're seeing there. Am I correct? You seeing that? Yes. Okay. So that was the formal request then, and I am returning with that formal request. Back in January, and I mentioned this in October as well, we received an executive order from the federal government indicating to us that we must end all discriminatory programs, including DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and any programs that obviously are part of that, that kind of verbiage, if you will, that kind of program that would obviously not be in alignment with the executive order. In addition, in February, we received another communication from the Department of Education, which basically told us that it was ready to take measures to assess compliance with that executive order, and that the executive order is a condition of receiving federal funding. At this point in 2026, the federal funding for Arizona is approximately $866 million. So we would be jeopardizing, obviously, by not having in alignment our framework and the verbiage in that framework if, in fact, it does not align with the executive order. In October, excuse me, as well, we had several questions. And what I'd like to do now is to go through those questions you brought to our attention and hopefully answer them in a way that is clear as to this formal request that we are making again today. The first question was, how will ADE define language related to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion? And what I need to say here is that it will not be our definition. We are going to convene a working group that will build those definitions for DEI and any DEI-related language to determine what language should be revised or removed, again, keeping in mind that we must be in alignment with that executive order. And that executive order is basically one that we do not want to jeopardize. Again, it means $866 million in funding for our programs. And Title III, the one I represent, English language learning, is one that is part of that, obviously, funding that is given to the state. The second question that was asked related to the charge of the stakeholder group, that group that we will convene. What is their charge for that group when it comes to the SEI endorsement course and the framework? The charge of that committee is to review the learning objectives of that SEI framework and to ensure that anything that is included in the objectives, in the verbiage, in part of that, obviously that SEI framework, is in line with the federal executive order. And the purpose, again, of the SEI course is to prepare teachers and administrators who are involved in the instruction of English language learners. How will the stakeholder group be selected? That was a very clear question to us. How are we going to select that group? ADE will send out a call for recommendations from the field to county education superintendents, LEA superintendents, practitioners of English language learning, our PEL group, as I referred to it last time, who are specialists in the field and who comprise quite a large group of practitioners of English language learning. We will send those contacts, obviously, a call for recommendations for contacts in Arizona. In addition, the SEI endorsement course framework working group will consist of at least, and we say at least, the following members with a goal to have 20 members or more. And I've listed for you, you can see them in the box there, elementary level teachers, secondary level teachers, school administrators, SEI course providers, which we have already in the field, from the LEAs, from Institutes of Higher Learning, and from individual consultants. We will obviously seek to involve them as well. And additional, obviously, members will be sought from the following. And I know it's a little bit not that easy to read here in this box, so I've included that in the next slide. But before going to the next slide, I do want to say that we will seek, as best as we can, representation from urban and rural areas for that committee. And in addition, not only include teachers from general education, but special education and other subgroups, like obviously representatives from other groups like special education as well. And very importantly, we will include parents. We will make sure that parents have a part on this committee as well. Now, as I said before, it's a little bit difficult to read in the previous slide, but ADE will attempt to have representation from all 15 counties. And we do that. We have obviously always made sure that we contact every county when we do training, when we do our monitoring. We ensure that we have representation from all counties. ADE will attempt to have, again, general education, special education, other subgroups like the gifted, the talented, EL, subgroups as well represented on that committee. And we will work with that key holder group to gather recommendations, obviously, when it comes to all of these other groups who are listed here: higher education, county education superintendents, Arizona school administrators, Arizona Rural School Association, the AEA, Arizona Education Association, and current SEI endorsement providers, as I mentioned before. So I've mentioned it more than once, but it's important that I reiterate that we will make every effort to ensure that that particular committee is representative of those stakeholders in our state. How will that work be structured was another question that you asked. Obviously, in my work, I prefer person-to-person whenever we can. I think that's the best kind of work that we can do. But whenever it's not possible, then we will use a virtual. So we'll use virtual and person-to-person or a hybrid meeting opportunity as needed. And we will consider how those recommended changes may impact the use of the SCI endorsement course framework for courses that already are in the field. Obviously, we will communicate with current providers because we have about 58 at last count of those already in the field. We will review and update already approved courses and communicate with prospective providers because we do have a number who are still wanting to provide that information and be either individual providers or institutes of higher learning, or many of them are individual LEAs. Now, the anticipated timeline for this work. We will be sending out a call for recommendations next month after the holidays in January. In addition, we will begin, our plan is to begin meeting with the working group in February, the following month. And we plan to communicate updates to you, the State Board of Education, at least every other month or as needed until a draft is ready. And the goal, and this is just an anticipated goal, will be to have a draft for you, the State Board of Education, by the fall, September of 2026. Those are the questions that were asked and brought to our attention. I hope I have answered them for you as best as we can in terms of information that we have at this point. And keeping in mind that obviously our intent here is to ensure that we are not jeopardizing that funding that is slated for Arizona, over $800 million. That is an integral part of the work that we do because we obviously use the funding to ensure that we meet the needs of all students. So based on that, the executive order is very important to us. We need to align what we do in our structured English immersion coursework, endorsement coursework framework, and we need to do it as quickly as we possibly can. Thank you. May I answer any questions?
Thank you so much for your presentation today. Do we have any questions from members of the board? Dr. Clay.
I do. Thank you, President Haley. My concern is when you keep saying as quickly as possible. Okay, when we received this earlier this year, that I'm just saying that is a concern of mine. With that, I'm concerned about the culture and the attitude of that committee. If somebody for example, if you are facilitating this with that type of attitude of we have to get it done as quickly as possible, would that, and this is just concerned, would that affect the culture of this committee? Would it be a underlying bullying that you have to do it my way? Would it be a place where people cannot have robust conversation because it takes a very skilled leader and facilitator to take a situation as serious as this right here, being very objective, okay, and bringing that to a conclusion. That is my definite concern. How we're going to, the process of how it's going to be done, it should not be a good old boy thing. It should be very transparent, extremely transparent, where no one is asking any questions about anything. And the culture of this group, many perspectives, people are listening. No one's afraid to say how they feel and what they see, because we know that DEI is a very subjective thing. And I want to make sure that this state has put it on the table, pulled that Band-Aid off the wound, if there is one, and wash it out clearly, and we have conversation about it. So my thing is this, when you keep saying it is very imperative, I feel like you're pushing me up against the ropes, making me make a decision. And I just want, my thing is, I support looking and reviewing. I support it because I like to just put everything out in the open. Let's see what's out there, but let's get everybody talking about it. Okay? And we come to a conclusion together as a state, as a committee. And these are the things I'm asking for, and these are the things that I'm going to be looking for, and I want to be involved in that. I want to make sure it happens. I don't want to just push it to you guys and then go off and do something else. We have to, I believe that we have to pull the Band-Aid off the wound, clean it, make sure everybody understands each other, and we have that robust conversation. But we need to make sure we do it right, not under duress, not under anything preconceived, but that committee is there and we're going to objectively look at everything and talk about it and talk about perspectives. This is what I want. I believe we have to do it, but I'm thinking of the culture. Thank you.
Did you want me to address your question? Yes, please. President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Clay, members of the board. First and foremost, I am a professional, okay? I've never been accused of being a bully, ever. And I will not start now. I can tell you that. I can tell you that in my 45 years of experience in education, in working with English language learning exclusively, I have always sought to do what is best for the student. I will continue to do that. And I will ensure that that committee does the same thing. At the bottom line, anytime I talk to parents, to groups of educators, the bottom line is always the end of my speech, and that is the student. And I will continue to do that. I can guarantee you that.
Thank you.
Superintendent Horn.
I just want to point out that the schedule that's called for provides for a report not until next September. And then, of course, the board has to act. I have fear that we could get caught flat-footed if the federal government starts cracking down before that. So this is not a fast schedule that has been presented.
Do we have questions from our virtual attendees? I can't tell. Dr. Cruz Rivera.
Thank you very much, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and I want to thank Associate Deputy Superintendent Adela Santa Cruz for addressing the questions that this board presented at the last meeting. I am very satisfied with the responses, and I am trustful that the motivations behind this work will translate to the integrity of its implementation. I do have a comment that I think will play out a little later when we entertain the motion, which is to say that it is important to recognize the tension that the board is dealing with, not only from the perspective of the broader social and political landscape, but also from the public comments we have heard, as well as the various letters that the board has received. And that is that on the one hand, this board is called upon to exercise its fiduciary duty and to ensure that we are positioning our Arizona Department of Education well to maintain its ability to receive the funding that is so necessary to advance the educational goals of our state. On the other hand, this board also has a public trust duty that it has to meet, and that pertains to the process, and it pertains to how this charge is carried out, and to Member Clay's previous comments, to the level of deliberation that goes into it. So my hope is that when we do get to the point of entertaining a motion as to this process moving forward, that we're able to balance that fiduciary responsibility with that public trust responsibility. And I'll be happy to offer some possible language to do that when the time comes. Thank you.
Any other questions? Member Katniss?
Thank you. I never know if you can see me or not, so I'm just like this. So first off, thank you for taking the time to answer some of our questions. For myself, I think that a lot of this is stemming from what I know. And from what I know as a teacher in a Title I school, in a very diverse school, I interact with English language learners every day. Majority of the population at our school are English language learners. And I think it's one of the most beautiful things about our state is that we are a very diverse state. We have great perspectives. We have different cultures. We have a lot of things that make Arizona, in my opinion, one of the best states in this country because of the fact that we can learn from each other. We can learn different backgrounds. We can learn different values. And I think that diversity really makes us stronger. So I really value the diversity that we bring to our classrooms. And I want to make sure that every single decision, especially through this body, that we make truly helps our students to learn and thrive. So I think I've been thinking about this a lot, and my hesitation is not political, but it's really about timing. It's really about stability. It's really about what's best for kids. And I value what my colleagues have said about if this does happen, that it's not just something that's quick, but something that's done with every single stakeholder in mind, with every single student in mind. Because what I am looking for whenever I hear from these presentations is I'm looking for this answer. Is this right for kids? Is this the right thing for kids? And although funding is a huge part of everything that we need in terms of doing this work, I don't think that that's necessarily my main motivation for doing something. And so I want to make sure that we are looking at things and looking at these standards and looking at these different I guess, practices that are going to impact our students. And is that really going to be what's best for them? And so right now, just putting it out there too, Arizona has lost 1,000 teachers just this semester. And our classrooms are stretched, our educators are overwhelmed. And so these standards, opening them up, adds another layer of challenge and another layer of change. And so it's something that we also have to look at within how is that also impacting our teaching population as well, but also, again, the kids. And so the federal directives, citing these as reasons for revising the SEI frameworks, they're not enforceable. So there's no really urgent external pressure right now to move quickly with exactly what Member Clay has said. But What I've not yet seen is how opening these frameworks right now will directly improve instruction for English language learners. So with deep respect to the department, I would like to, I guess, know how is this the right time for kids? How is this the right time for our teachers? That's my question. So, and really, I mean it with all due respect. I just want to know what is our reasoning right now for kids?
Okay. President Haley, Superintendent Horn, member Cantonese, members of the board. Anytime that we look at making changes, we're always looking at positive changes, obviously. And as I look at the framework, I know that the framework is intended to prepare teachers who will be working with English language learners, and also administrators, so that they are very much in understanding of what's going on with the English language learning instruction. And the SEI framework is intended to obviously meet the English language needs of those students so that we can move them obviously into proficiency, as you well know. And obviously the reading, the writing, the speaking, the listening, the grammar that we teach in those classes is what's most important here. And once we get that information to students, they have a better understanding of the standards, the English language proficiency standards. They have a better understanding of the AZELA and what's on that exam, so they can pass the AZELA and reach proficiency. So I think there is, if you were to ask me, and you just did, what's one of the big reasons why we want to look at those standards. And from my point of view is, I know that our reclassification rate in Arizona for our English language learners has not been the best in the last 3 years. And obviously that reclassification rate is a measure of how much English proficiency our students have. And we want to ensure that our framework, as we review it, as we see it, that those objectives there are going to be not only in line, of course, with the executive order, but also very much in line with what our students should be learning to reach that proficiency level. We want our students to be successful. We want them to understand the language, if you will, the science of language, which is the reading, the writing, the speaking, the listening, the grammar, as I just said. And we want to make sure that they have the time, that they are given the time within that framework when they are taught, whether it's 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, or even 30 minutes in a dual learning classroom, that they have the time with that language information to get them to proficiency. And so in my mind, I believe that it's a good time to review the standards to ensure that we are giving those students the language, meeting their language needs, if you will, to move them to proficiency. That's another piece that's very important when it comes to reviewing the obviously the framework for the endorsement. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you for that. And I guess I'm thinking about it also from, I know that you mentioned a whole bunch of stakeholders that would be a part of this group. And I'm wondering if I could offer a suggestion, if this were to be opened, that there were former SEI students that are also part of this framework, because they have experienced, being in the classroom. They've experienced, if what you're saying right now is about reclassification, is about students and sort of what they're learning as well. Is it possible for us to have former students also on that framework? Because I'm sure we could find some former students, especially some former students maybe that are now educators as well, because I think that that's a really powerful voice. That's a voice of students that have gone through the system, have been in our public schools, that have really seen what has been helpful and what has not been helpful, especially if these standards have not been opened up and have not been, I guess, looked at. Because my hesitation is, whenever we open up standards, sometimes we put experts on these panels, and I'm going to put air quotes experts, but they're not the kids, they're not the families that we serve. And so that to me is always my heart. That's always going to be where I come from. And so I just want to throw that out there as well.
thank you for that, obviously a suggestion. And I would, as you're saying, former SCI students, these would be students who are reclassified, absolutely, and who are either now in the mainstream, and they would be easy to find, honestly. And that's really a good suggestion that we'll list as well. Or they may be out in, working or at a higher education status, whatever. If we can locate those and get a hold, obviously, of any names that we obviously can use, then we will certainly do that. We want to do what is right for them and their voice. I mean, what better voice, as you said, than students who have been there and who have done that, and their suggestions as well. So thank you, and I will take that suggestion.
And sorry, one more thing. And I want to borrow some language from a friend and a colleague, Juliana Urtube, who is the National Teacher of the Year a couple of years ago, who is a proud Arizonan educator. With her own students, I think that she used some language that I think is extremely powerful and something that we should do across the state. She called her students linguistically gifted. And I think that in our state, we have so many students that are linguistically gifted that one of the things that we cannot do is we cannot make our students feel not seen, not prepared, not valued because of politics. We have to make sure that our students feel loved and supported and welcomed, because that's what truly makes our state so unique and so amazing. And so I really value diversity. I really value the differences that we have, because when we understand other cultures, we understand other differences, it makes us stronger. And that is extremely valuable to our state. That is extremely something that we are going to need students that are bilingual. We are going to need students that grow up to be these educators and these business leaders and whatever they dream of. We don't want to be a place that makes someone feel lesser than because of the strengths that they actually bring to the table. And so I would very much so value those perspectives being brought into the conversation.
Thank you.
Superintendent Horn.
Yes, let me just address things that has been raised by Member Catanese, because I totally agree with you about valuing the strengths that people bring to the table, and you have a great academic record, so you've shown that attitude works. In terms of timing, though, I want to be sure that people understand the seriousness of this situation that we've been presented with. I'm not sure it's sunk in with everybody. Our legislature has a deficit right now, so we can't expect help from the legislature or state funds. President Trump has said that educational institutions that maintain DEI will lose their federal funding. We could say, well, he doesn't really mean it, but that doesn't appear to be consistent with his history. As I observe his history, when he says he's going to do something, he does it, whether you agree with it or not. If he says he's going to do something, he does it. And I'm concerned, we've taken a position of being deliberative and not reporting till September, at which point we still have to wait for the state board to act. I'm concerned that he may act before we get done. And so I'm going to, just carry that worry with me. But I think it's important that all board members realize we are facing a very difficult situation, and it's not pretend, and it's not something that can be ignored. If President Trump says he's going to do something, my experience is he does it, whether you agree with him or not. And he has said that he will cut off funding if DEI is maintained. And I just hope September is soon enough.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the board? Member Kervikas.
Thank you. I really appreciated the comments in the public comments. One of the women said talked about the language. Language does change over time. Things become say bad words, but things that they change over time. So I hope that that conversation is balanced, because many of the things that we now, the words have become tarnished, maybe is a better word to use, are still things that we value and things that are good for kids and things that improve instruction. So hopefully some of that conversation is how can we keep those values and the research-based components, but yet, I don't want to say reward it because I don't want to diminish the effort, because I think it's a big effort and I think it's an important conversation, but there's got to be a balance between keeping the things that we know are good for kids and the values that we have and the language that we use.
Yes, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Kravickas, and members of the board. When I think of some of these terms, I always, the word that comes to my mind is value. And value is in the individual, in the student. Like I said before, in 35 years that I was in the classroom, I taught many, many, many students from different countries because they were all here to learn English. And any time that a student walked into my classroom, there was never a question in my mind as to how I was going to look at that person differently, but rather how I was going to value what that person brought as an individual, as a student, into my classroom. And the important reason, one of the important reasons that student was there, because he or she wanted to learn English and they wanted to learn it well. And obviously that was my charge, to ensure that these students would learn English. Of course, always knowing that I had these students that I valued because they were there, because they were important. And obviously knowing that by teaching them and giving them that academic achievement, I was valuing who they were and moving them on and ensuring that they would be able to do what they needed to do, not only in school, but later on in life as well, by their academic achievement. So I agree with what you're saying. I think it all comes back, as I said before, to that whole issue of value. And what is that? What's included in that value of the student? I will tell you that in the 35 years that I was in the classroom, I don't think I ever had anyone hand me a list of what I had to do to value a student. I never was handed a list. I always knew in my mind, because as an educator, as a teacher, and those are the people we have out there working with our students, they know the value of a student. And they know that obviously their job is also to ensure that academically they are achieving and they are moving on with the skills that they need to be successful. And so it's kind of a roundabout way of saying I agree with you. I do. At the same time, I also have to state that our teachers, when we have very good teachers in this state, and very good, committed teachers of English language learning who want to do what is best for their students. So obviously, we will continue to see that, I hope, and we will continue to do everything possible through this review process to ensure that that is happening, that is continuing. With not only our English language learners, of course, the framework is for the teachers of ELs, but we should be doing that with all students.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, I'd like to have us move to, do I have a motion?
This one. Yeah, Dr. Rivera.
Yes,
Dr.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and Executive Director Ross, would it be appropriate at this time to offer some language for a motion?
President Haley, one moment. Dr. Cruz Rivera, thank you. Yeah, those on who are virtual, if you could mute until you're speaking. Sorry, we're having a little bit of a sound issue in the boardroom. Dr. Cruz Rivera, will you be making? Let's have President Haley make the motion, and then you could propose an amendment to that motion. So, President Haley, why don't you begin?
Great, thank you. Do I have a motion that the board open the structured English immersion endorsement course frameworks for elementary and secondary levels for revision? Superintendent makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I just promoted you to doctor. Member Kravickas makes a second. All in favor?
So, we would go to Dr. Cruz Rivera is proposing an amendment to the motion. Is my
Wouldn't that
understanding.
usually happen at the beginning of the
would-
motion
you-
or after the second?
So you've proposed the motion and then he's going to propose an amendment.
Okay. Dr.
Thank you, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and Executive Director Ross. My motion would read as follows. I move to open the SEI framework for revisions to identify and recommend possible changes needed to align with Federal Executive Order 14151, subject to the expert working group being charged to first establish specific definitions for the terms in question and to limit their subsequent recommendations to the technical alignment necessary to comply with the order while preserving necessary pedagogical language to preserve high-quality instruction and workforce readiness. This is an attempt to bring together not only the formal request, but the responses to the questions and the discussions we've had regarding the need to be responsible from a fiduciary perspective at the same time that we advance public trust.
So do I need to now have, that's
President
the new
Haley.
motion because it's slightly different than the
Yeah.
original one. So
And
it's an amendment.
Amendment.
So do I need to restate that and have a first and a second to that change?
We just, that's the amended motion. Second to the
Yeah.
amended motion.
If we would need a second to the amended motion, but actually, since it's the first time you all are hearing it, what I would like is for Dr. Cruz Rivera to repeat the motion.
Sounds good. Good.
Thank you. I move to open the SEI framework for revisions to identify and recommend possible changes needed to align with Federal Executive Order 14151, subject to the expert working group being charged to first establish specific definitions for the terms in question and to limit their subsequent recommendations to the technical alignment necessary to comply with the order while preserving necessary pedagogical language to preserve high-quality instruction and workforce readiness.
I'll second.
Superintendent Horn makes a second. With that, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing that there are none, the motion carries.
Board members that are joining us virtually, it looks like there is going to be a fire drill, so we're going to have to pause the meeting. We will be back.
Take care.
Board members, we just, for those of you joining us virtually, just want to let you know that we're back in the boardroom. We are going to test mics real quick, so I'm going to shut off the live stream for just 1 second here, but stay connected with me.